Before we get into an actual critique, I must caveat, I love Love Island. My friend Lizzie got me into it in our first year of uni. She said if we watched it, then she'd give me penguins and wine. Penguins are biscuits, by the way, we weren't just munching on seabirds. And I watched it, and I was like, wow, straight people be acting crazy. You could never see me behaving like this. But then we got to the first recoupling. There was a twist. And then I was hooked. If you've never seen Love Island, then congrats. Seriously. Congratulations. I envy you. The premise of Love Island is simple. 6 men and 6 women enter a villa in Spain. I'm only going to be talking about the original Love Island, aka Love Island UK. So if you can't tell, I am indeed British. Anyway, 6 Islanders of a very distinct type enter the villa. They're all ridiculously thin, to the point where this most recent season, an American footballer was cast. And because he's, a professional athlete, a healthy guy, he has a layer of fat over his muscles because that's, normal. Twitter responded by going, Jesus, could this guy not have just gone to the gym before appearing on Love Island? What have our standards dropped to nowadays? Contestants are usually working class. We get a lot of builders, we get a lot of beauticians, we get a lot of models. But every season there's a spicy contestant that has a really interesting job. So one season there was a junior doctor. One season there was a scientist who was making cancer vaccines. And one season there was a woman who worked in humanitarian bomb disposal. I tried explaining this to my mother, who has spent her life working in human rights law, and she responded by saying, yeah, but she's still stupid because she went on Love Island. The aim of the game is to be in a couple. At the end of every week, there's a recoupling in which the contestants choose they want to be partnered up with. If you are not chosen, you are dumped. In the first episode, Islanders couple up. Essentially, the women will stand in a line, a man will come in, say 3 or 4 words, and then the women will step forward if they fancy them. The man can then couple up with a woman, and that makes our established first 6 couples. These 6 initial couples are immediately tested by bombshells. Bombshells are new contestants that come into the villa with the express aim of splitting up the established contestants in order to secure their own place in the villa. Contestants can also be dumped via public vote. In the past, you could vote for specifically who you wanted to be dumped, but nowadays you instead vote for the couple or boy or girl individually that you want to save. Every so often there will be 6 islanders vulnerable and it is left to their fellow contestants to decide who stays and who goes. When Love Island is at its best, it's an honest portrayal of human relationships. Some of the strongest seasons had some of the strongest connections. In season 3 we saw Camilla come out of her shell in order to find her soulmate in Jamie. While of course we all enjoyed watching the one brain cell that Chris and Cam would constantly pass between one another. In season 5 we got the Amber and Anna friendship alongside the himbo-bimbo iconic couple Molly, May and Tommy. When Love Island is good, it can show us a somewhat honest portrayal of a strong romantic relationship. When it's bad, it's really, really bad. Before I begin attacking the show, I want to reiterate that I really enjoy Love Island, and I'm not alone in that opinion. In the sociology paper Love Island and Relationship Education, Jeanette Porter and Kay Standing discussed the show's viewership. The 2019 series of Love Island had an average audience of 3.63 million, peaking at 4.05 million for the show's finale, and gained a 21.4% average audience share. The viewing is both gendered and generational. The 2018 Series 3 of Love Island attracted more than half, 52.3% of all television viewing, by the 16 to 24 age group, most of which were young women aged 16 to 34. These statistics are unprecedented for modern television viewing. You don't binge Love Island, you park yourself in front of the television at 9 PM and you open up Twitter and you scroll through Baloo Babalola's feed religiously because you just need to know her most recent hot take on Tyler and Kaz, okay? It's just essential to the viewing experience. Honestly, sometimes I genuinely don't even watch the actual show, I just scroll through the tweets because it's more entertaining than actually watching the entire thing. Love Island is well-crafted reality TV. In the same paper on Love Island in Relationship Education, Porter and Standing stated the appeal of reality TV is the audience sees the journey of self-transformation through which ordinary contestants find their true self or their true love. And we can certainly see these journeys in the most popular seasons of Love Island. For example, season 5 winner Amber Gill went on a huge journey. Fans initially found her annoying. Then they wanted her to win the 50k after she coupled up with Michael. Then Michael dumped her for a new girl, Joanna, when they were separated by Casa Amor. Amber held her own and refused to take him back, and instead recoupled with Greg, even though Michael had admitted that he still had feelings for her. Amber's journey is one of a young woman realising her self-worth after being in a toxic relationship. Unfortunately, it's relatable for many young women, and somehow cathartic to see play out on reality television. Furthermore, Love Island has this place in the cultural lexicon where, because it mainly stars working class Brits and it's mainly enjoyed by young women, people think that if you watch the show or if you're on the show that you're stupid. And this argument is just frustrating because it prevents any further exploration as to why Love Island is potentially harmful. Love Island never claimed to be intellectually stimulating. It's a reality TV dating show. Watching something entertaining isn't the be-all and end-all of somebody's intellect. Plus, this is Britain. If there's going to be a cultural debate here in the UK, it's going to get classist. Like I said, this show stars electricians, plumbers, builders. You should see how angry people got when nobody wanted to go out with the posh doctor. I remember in Amber's season, people would make fun of her for saying things like, he doesn't want us, instead of he doesn't want me. And of course they included that because she speaks like this, it's not because Newcastle has a rich, interesting cultural history. No, it is because she's stupid. Like, maybe if she went to Oxford like the Prime Minister, then she would know how to articulate herself correctly. Love Island is a well-produced reality TV show that has tapped into our cultural obsession with romance. But it's also an incredibly problematic show which exploits its contestants and taps into issues with gender dynamics, desirability, and sexual politics. Love Island is dangerous because the whole format of the show is based around finding a relationship. Not love, just the relationship that will keep you on the show. And the show exposed a lot of the biggest issues with modern dating. Love Island exposed a lot of issues about the way that men and women interact within romantic relationships, to the point where it has been called out by Women's Aid for allowing contestants to gaslight each other. Love Island also places a very heavy emphasis on traditional gender roles. These roles are clear from the beauty standards placed upon the contestants. Women have long hair and wear dresses. Men have short hair and wear suits. There is no deviation from the norm. The show essentially pushes the men are from Mars, women are from Venus argument. It's antiquated, inaccurate, and incredibly harmful. I must take a moment to point out that when I say men and women, I am talking about cis men and women. This show is very gender essentialist. I would honestly worry for the safety of any trans or non-binary contestants. When Abigail Thorne describes the UK as Turf Island, she is barely scratching the surface. Love Island also exposed a lot of the issues surrounding dating and race. When I explained the show's format, I mentioned that some of the contestants are referred to as bombshells because they come in to break up existing couples. If the producers want to test a relationship, they will often send in a white blonde woman to test whether anyone could ever be attracted to a black woman. You see, the thing is, a Love Islander's type on paper is very important. However, most contestants' type on paper is blonde, brunette, or tall, dark, and handsome. The subtext is that most of the contestants show a preference for white women and white men, but it is overwhelmingly black women that are never picked for dates. The final reason that Love Island is dangerous is probably the most crucial. Love Island is famous for having its contestants and former host commit suicide. And despite the constant complaints to Ofcom, groups like Women's Aid releasing statements about emotional abuse, and the show itself essentially saying that they refuse to cast anyone that isn't stick thin because they're not attractive enough, the show continues to be massively popular, even though it's possibly the most exploitative show in this country. The whole notion of Love Island enforces gender normativity. The girls and boys are essentially in two different teams that oppose each other, often literally. Almost every episode there's a challenge in which it's boys versus girls or couples competing against each other. In the sociology paper Toxicity and Femininity in Love Island, how reality dating shows perpetuate sexist attitudes towards women, Alicia Denby quoted Sweet's statement, "Romantic relationships are the arena in which traditional gender roles are upheld most strongly." This idea is constantly seen on Love Island. A key part of Love Island is testing the relationships formed on the show. These tests are characteristically quite exploitative of the contestants involved. They often rally up a lot of emotion in the contestants and are very divisive amongst fans. Some love the drama, some call Ofcom and report emotional abuse. The Love Island producers like to upload them to their YouTube channel with really sensitive titles like "The Most Explosive Arguments of All Time," or "Biggest Bust-Ups of 2019," and "Scott and Marlon get into a huge fight." Referencing a 2009 paper named Fallen Women in Reality TV, Alicia Denby stated that contestants' emotions are often manipulated in order to capture the money shot, a term borrowed from film pornography to describe the orgasmic scene. Grindstaff and Dabrowski suggest the money shot is utilised to depict the build-up of emotion, which erupts in a climactic, spectacular and excessive display, whether this is the overpowering confession of love or eruption of anger and jealousy. Some of the most famous scenes in Love Island's history could be described as money shots, which I'm sure the producers would fucking love, unfortunately. And the people that are usually most emotional in these money shots are women. Let's have a look at a few of these iconic bust-ups and analyse the gender dynamics at play within them. In the 2019 season, Amber and Michael looked set to win 50k. These two strong personalities had found love through each other's vulnerabilities. For Amber, a lot of the insecurities sounded, in retrospect, very gendered. Amber constantly worried that she was too much for a man and hard work. Michael reassured her. No, he liked that. He liked that they were both so straightforward and no nonsense. Halfway through every season, the producers split the established couples by gender. In the 2019 season, all the women left the villa and went to Casa Amor. And because it's a bunch of English people, Casa Amor is the most respect we've ever seen for the Spanish culture in the entire franchise. You could have at least called it Casa de Amor, like, for fuck's sake. When the men and women are separated, the producers send in 6 new men and women. When the week ends, the islanders are given a choice. Do they stick with their current partner, or do they couple up with somebody that they met in Casa Amor? Amber decides to be loyal to Michael, while Michael decides to couple up with a new girl named Joanna. When Michael returns, he says the reason he left Amber is because actually there were a lot of behaviours that she had that made him feel like he couldn't be himself. He was always biting his tongue around her. It was all a lie. He never actually liked how Amber could be forthright. Or he just didn't like it when Amber made it clear that he was in the wrong. This culminates in a big bust-up where Michael accuses Amber of turning all the girls in the villa against him. He gaslights her by saying that she's raising her voice at him when all she's doing is calmly explaining how he hurt her and why the girls are therefore angry. Amber's best friend in the villa, Anna, also calls out Michael for changing his behaviour towards Amber. Amber never raises her voice until Michael is screaming at both her and her best friend in the villa. And, because he's classy, he has to do this in front of all the other islanders. The gender dynamics in this fight are deeply troubling. As I said earlier, Michael displays clear signs of gaslighting. Referring back to the Toxicity and Femininity in Love Island paper, Denby cites the medical website Healthline's definition of gaslighting. Defined as a form of emotional abuse where the victim is manipulated to the extent that they begin to question their thoughts, memories, and events occurring around them. Denby discusses in her paper about how convincing women that they are crazy is so societally accepted because of, your old favourite historical misogyny. But, modern day sexists think that women are trying to castrate them because Doctor Who's a woman now. Historically, women were classed as witches and diagnosed insane by virtue of their disobedience to feminine ideals and rebellion against the female role. As such, cultural ideas of madness were fundamentally shaped by patriarchal structures as a means to reassert men's power and control over women and prevent nonconformities to the feminine ideal. Indeed, while the stereotype of the crazy woman has evolved, consistent with social and cultural developments toward gender equality, despite such changes, this stereotype continues to draw upon deviations of femininity particularly surrounding women's instability and irrationality. As wordy as Denby's argument is, let's break it down in relation to this fight between Amber and Mike. Michael is gaslighting Amber because he said during their relationship he felt like he was unable to speak his mind. Even though, when he was initially pursuing her, he said those were the qualities he liked about her, and he can't convince the viewers to remember it wrong because it's literally on tape. Michael then tries to paint Amber as the aggressor because he says that she has turned all the women of the villa against him, when what has actually happened is that the women of the villa have turned against him because of how he treated Amber. It's important to note that during this entire argument, Michael never takes the blame. He never says, well, I just wasn't feeling it, so I moved on. No. He puts the entirety of the blame on Amber because, well, she's crazy. She's a woman, and when all these women conspire against him, well, it's because all women are crazy. How are women meant to respond to behaviour like this? Well, in Amber's case, it's to dump the guy for an Irish fella, but for me, I like to live by words of a contemporary feminist philosopher. They're burning all the witches even if you aren't one. So light me up. Light me up. Go ahead and light me up. Let's have a look at another gaslighting example. Also in 2019, Jordan and Anna coupled up a few days before Casa Amor. While they were together, they enjoyed a light amount of chemistry, but nothing too serious. When Anna went to Casa Amor, she decided to couple up with Ovi because he was more her type on paper, while Jordan remained single. Anna said that she didn't realise that Jordan really liked her and then decided to rekindle their coupling. Jordan later decided to make Anna his girlfriend. 3 days later, he decided he wanted to crack on with India. I separated this fight from Michael and Amber because not only is it another example of gaslighting, but it's the first time, I think, in all of Love Island that I have watched, that I see people question the strict gender roles that people separate into when there's a fight. All the men will side with the men, and all the women will side with the women. Tommy Fury is out here proving why you should always trust a himbo more than a so-called nice guy. Essentially, the gender split begins after Curtis tells Maura what Jordan is intending to do, i.e. crack on with India. Maura is livid and decides to go and tell Amber, even though Curtis constantly tells her not to because, well, Amber might go crazy and stop Jordan from finding true love. I mean, Jordan's the important person here. Before this, Curtis was widely considered the nice guy at the villa, the model of masculinity that all the other men should look up to, even though he broke Amy's heart earlier in the series. In Love Island and Relationship Education, Porter and Standing noted that Amy leaving the show to prioritise Curtis' relationship with Maura was seen as positive behaviour despite prioritising men's emotional and sexual views at the expense of women's. This is an example of himpathy, the excessive or inappropriate sympathy extended towards a male agent or wrongdoer over his female victim, reinforcing gendered ideologies of female passivity. Needless to say, Curtis clearly viewed women as a whole as passive, so he thought when he told Maura this that nothing was going to happen. Obviously, Maura would just calm down, obey him, and put the feelings of the man first. Instead, Maura tells him off and informs Anna of Jordan's deceit. Anna confronts Jordan, reminding him, "You have a fucking girlfriend, you idiot." And Jordan just does some, classic gaslighting. When did I say that? What did I say? You're the most negative person I've ever met in my whole life. Why are you shouting like that? If there's any other English lit students out here, you can tell that he's using a lot of, rhetorical questions to avoid giving her any answers. He should be a politician. Interestingly, this fight between Anna and Jordan is the first time I have seen a man question another man's perspective. Tommy does listen to Jordan, but then he goes over to ask the girls what they think happened. Unheard of. Unheard of in Love Island history. Because the men and the women are so divided, they essentially have this camaraderie amongst each other in which they never question the actions of their own gender. This came to a head in the current season when Jake was exposed for egging on all the other boys to cheat on their partners in Casa Amor. Jake's excuse was one girls all over the country have heard and hate. It's a lad's holiday! This essentially means that amongst men, respect for women just disappears. However, Love Island doesn't discriminate when it comes to exploiting contestants' emotions. No. Men are subject to verbal abuse too. In 2019, Kitty Nichols wrote a paper entitled "Learning from Love Island? Diversification of the Hegemonic Man, in which she dissected the show's portrayal of masculinity and acts of manhood. She wrote, Cannell's 2005 concept of a gender order and hegemonic masculinity centre upon the notion of power, with the assumption that men are complicit within the maintenance and continuation of hegemonic gender structures and dynamics within society. We see masculine power being upheld in the Dubitz society. Men get more powerful through sex, whereas women, well, if you're going to have a conservative mindset, we lose our purity. And that's all we're good for. Thus far, this video has only discussed masculinity in a very stereotypical fashion. Men want sex, men view women as a means for sex, men have no emotions. But that's not the case for every man on the show. Insanely, even among the incredibly small demographic of people that are even allowed on the show, there is a diversity in the way in which men present their masculinity. Nichols argues that maybe this depiction of gender on Love Island isn't as rigid as we first thought. Is it possible that maybe multiple masculinities can be experienced at once without favouring one over the other? Hegemonic masculinity is traditionally built on a system in which men's expression of emotions is downplayed or hidden, with previous studies demonstrating that men's emotional inexpressiveness was influenced by patriarchal privilege. This is the mindset that influences sayings like, boys don't cry. The mindset that pushes boys away from playing with baby dolls and towards playing with plastic guns. Men are taught to conquer, not nurture, and this patriarchal norm is incredibly violent. But, that's another video. Comment below if you would like me to make another video essay about something like why video games are actually bad and you guys need to analyse things more, or a pithier title than that. However, the assumption that men are unemotional can also be used to abuse men. In the case of Love Island, women have subjected their partners to verbal abuse, and I have yet to see a statement from Women's Aid condemning it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have yet to see one. In Diversification of the Hegemonic Man, she discusses how Chris was still able to project masculinity while being outwardly emotional. Fucking hell, he had every right to be emotional, coupled up with Olivia. There's a video on Love Island's YouTube channel called Hurricane Olivia, in which she makes multiple members of the villa cry. And this is, kind of her fault, because Sam, the guy who she was coupled up with, was annoyed that she had cracked onto Chris without telling him. And Olivia took this fiery, or in other words, unreasonable attitude into her relationship with Chris. Olivia made him cry constantly. They had this continuous argument in which Olivia always said that she felt like she couldn't be herself around Chris, and being herself around him apparently meant constantly screaming at him. Kitty Nichols expressed how Chris essentially had to justify how much he cried on national television by discussing his mental health. Chris cried nearly as much as fellow Islander Camilla. However, Camilla's emotionality wasn't pointed out as much. It was commented on, but it wasn't as much as an outlier because, well, Camilla's a woman. Nichols specifically discussed the iconic Chris meme where he is lying in bed after Olivia has recoupled with Mike. Nichols argues that despite the public caricature of this image, the overwhelming response was that Chris was praised for bearing all. What was interesting about this example is that as viewers, we had to grapple with the different facets of Chris's masculinity. This resonates with the idea that men struggle to do emotion and to navigate this alongside expectations of the hegemonic male. Nichols notes that Chris wasn't always able to negotiate his masculinity along with his emotions. However, I would argue this actually made Chris a more popular contestant. When he was an arrogant dick at the start of the season, everybody hated him. After a lot of tears and bad rapping, he became a national treasure. Maybe that hegemonic masculinity isn't all it's cracked up to be, lads. Whenever you're writing and creating a piece about sex and relationships, knowing that your family is going to be watching it, it's always a little bit embarrassing. And then you have to write the heading, Sex on Love Island. I'm sorry, Mum. I know that Adam was always your favourite. Let's start by using some academic language, to lull Mum into a false sense of security. You see, there's this journal called Frontiers of Sociology, which has greatly informed my analysis. Just going to note that the editor of all of these papers went to the same alma mater as me. I'm glad to know neither of us have real degrees. This was the journal that published the Kitty Nichols paper on hegemonic masculinity. Or hegemonic, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Nichols argues that on Love Island, audiences are shown ideal types of masculinity with characteristics such as heterosexuality, toughness, strength, and virility celebrated. I certainly agree with this argument. Contestants often say that they need to date someone that goes to the gym a lot. This season, Priya and Matthew were flirting by doing press-ups next to each other. I mean, honestly, what are the thin people going to think of next? Nichols then quoted Jeff Hearn's perspective on masculine identities. Masculinities are not fixed formulae, but rather combinations of actions, part powerful, part arbitrary, performed in reaction and relation to complex material relations and emotional demand, and recognised by others as signifying that this is a man. Nichols herself then states, building on this, it is argued that becoming a man is a dramaturgical I need to learn how to speak task, and that men need to perform manhood acts to prove masculine identity. And Nichols says that the men on Love Island perform their masculinity by bragging about the girls they've had sex with, which they do quite a lot. In the 2018 season, Wes created the Do Bits Society, a little group amongst the boys where he could brag about any action he was getting. The group reflected the underlying emphasis and value placed upon heterosexual success which permeates the show, since the DBS created a ranking system comprising different intimate interactions, ranking these according to perceived significance, with penetrative sex valued most highly and kissing the least. There aren't any points for, giving a partner an orgasm or anything like that. Nichols argues that the performances of masculinity associated with the DBS echoed what Wellard refers to as expected masculinities, whereby men were anticipated to display particular characteristics aligning with the dominant model of gender relations in the space. In Nichols' paper, he says that the DBS constructs and reinforces dominant masculinity. The whole idea of the DBS says that masculinity is linked to sex, and therefore the men use the DBS in order to create a hierarchy amongst themselves. And outside of the DBS was Dr. Alex. Dr. Alex George is a pretty famous contestant in the history of Love Island because of his constant failure with women. And this was partly because he was an outlier in Love Island history. He was a doctor. As we established, in the UK, Love Island has a reputation for being a show starring stupid people, made for stupid people. And because it's the UK, stupid means working class here. God save that parasite on the throne, etc., etc. Alex was extremely middle class. There was a part of the show where Jack even had to teach him how to floss. But Alex's middle classness meant that he wasn't a hit with women. Mums up and down the nation were appalled. He's a doctor. Think of the financial security that he could offer your daughter. So, Alex maintained his place on the island through friendships. A good example of this was his relationship with Samira. Samira was also constantly getting rejected, but not because she was middle class, because Love Island is racist. And don't worry, I'll get back to how Love Island treats their black contestants. But eventually, Alex coupled up with Alexandra, and people thought this was it. He's finally found his match. Who, shared the same name as him. I don't know why that decision was made. Nichols analyses Alex's instruction into the DBS as follows. Significantly, Dr. Alex, who up until this point had been framed by women in Villa and viewers as a nice guy, due in part to his chivalry and respect for women, was seen describing an intimate interaction with Alexandra which involved him showing her his genitals. While this was judged by his peers as not counting as significant interaction to gain full entry into the DBS, the men celebrated his progress. The significance of this case was that viewers framed his behaviour as inappropriate, positioning this in stark opposition to his true identity. It was inappropriate because it wasn't consensual. Fortunately, it wasn't the first or the last instance of non-consensual sexual activity on Love Island. But the reaction was interesting. As Nichols states, viewers believed that Dr. Alex had succumbed to the dominant male behaviours performing masculinities that were expected of him. Because Alex later said that he didn't want to let the other boys down. I don't buy this. Never trust a nice guy. Curtis Pritchard, you will atone for your sins. But I think it is an interesting analysis of why men do behave the way they do. If we create a space in which men believe that masculinity is contingent on performing with women, then we create a space that encourages men to conquer women, no matter the consequences. It's a social pressure that turns men into incels. It's the social pressures that fuel pickup artists. It's the social norms that validate rape culture. And that in itself is fundamentally dangerous. I think Nichols' paper picked up on a more general issue I've had with the show's depiction of sex. It's not unique to Love Island, it's a problem with all of the hets. The show's depiction of sex is very phallocentric. Penetrative sex is seen as the be-all and end-all of a relationship, with the act itself being lauded above any other sexual interaction. They even describe penetrative sex as graduating, like penetrative sex is the end-all sexual education. Now I'm sure you're thinking, Charlie, you slagged off heterosexuality a lot. Has there ever been a gay couple on Love Island? And yes. Yes, there has. Love Island 2016. It's new. Hasn't really figured out his kinks yet. For example, they have this bit in the ad break where Caroline Flack would say, "This summer, it's survival of the fittest." Do you get the double meaning there? The first episode is typical Love Island. There's one boy too many and they both fancy the same girl. They all get a bit drunk. They argue about whether they should do things in bed. And then episode 2 rolls around, and Sophie, who was already my favourite by this point, she's got a great accent and she's quite cheeky, reveals that she's only dated lesbians for the past 2 years. Sophie spent a lot of her time on Love Island coupled up with this Welsh guy called Tom. Full disclosure, I haven't seen all of season 2, but I wrote Tom off after he called Sophie a slag for not sleeping with him on the first night. Sophie did tell Tom that she had been romantically involved with women, but refused to call herself bi, probably thinking that if she actually labelled herself, men would be turned off by it. Sophie eventually seemed to come to terms with her bisexuality and became less afraid of the label. And then Katie came in. Katie immediately says she's attracted to women with brown hair, big boobs and dimples. Me and all the other girls in the villa are like, yes, 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 finally, gay content on Love Island. Katie and Sophie do kiss and later couple up. How does the show handle this? Well, personally, I think Ian Sterling owes every bi woman 50k. Because almost every time that Sophie and Katie were seen together, he's like, OMG, how hot, 2 women. Doesn't this turn all the men on? 2 women being together tends to have nothing to do with men, actually. Sorry to break it. Unfortunately, Katie and Sophie broke up the episode after they got together. Sophie argued that she wanted the relationship to be platonic, and Katie was upset because she put herself on the line. She openly discussed her sexuality on national television. Sophie said, well, she still had feelings for Tom, and at the end of the day, she'd come onto Love Island to find a relationship with a man, not a woman. At the end of the day, Sophie was accused of coupling up with somebody that she faked a connection with in order to stay on the show and get a shot at winning the 50k. So I guess that's equality. On Love Island, you can be mugged off regardless of your partner's gender. As I said in the introduction of this video, the body standards in Love Island are fucking ridiculous. To the point where if a girl says she's curvy, it means she has fake tits. When questioned why Love Island only ever cast thin people, former host Caroline Flack said, well, because it's aspirational. Because everyone aspires to be a thin woman with silicone lips. It's so frustrating that the body positivity movement is reduced to whether or not thin people find fat people attractive. It's about so much more than that. It's about medical discrimination, employment discrimination. It's about parents having their children taken away from them because of their weight. That is a true story. But since we're on the topic anyway, let's talk specifically about the fat phobia on Love Island. The bodies on Love Island are not at all representative of the bodies in the UK. Over here, the average dress size is 16, which is actually a size larger than I am, and I'm sure you've already realised I'm far too fat to have ever been cast on Love Island. You know, Pretty Little Thing doesn't stock dresses that accommodate even one belly roll. In Sophie Hagen's book Happy Fat, she discusses how television's depictions of fat people influence how we are treated in the outside world. She points to the examples of New Girl Schmidt and Friends' Monica. In both these examples, the characters are only portrayed as fat in flashbacks in which they are wearing deeply offensive fat suits. these fat iterations of the characters portrayed as lazy, greedy. No idea about how embarrassing they are. I mean, how dare a fat person not hate their entire existence? Hagen goes on to ask why are fat characters always reduced to these same lazy stereotypes, whereas thin people can have any attributes under the sun. Well, it's because fat people are seen as nothing but their body. And because we live in a world in which we are conditioned to believe that fat people are attractive, that's all the that's all the producers see when they are casting the show. We already know they don't question the white supremacy of the conventionally attractive narrative. So why would they question fat phobia? Hagen puts it bluntly. They, meaning thin people, just assumed you were complicit in the idea that you, a fat person, were not a sexual or romantic option. And that says it all. The problem with Love Island's presentation of the body extends far beyond their fat phobia. In a world where gender non-conformity is becoming more and more mainstream, Love Island is here to remind you how cishet should present themselves in, J.K. Rowling's ideal world. Women, you must have long hair, ideally straight and in line with Eurocentric beauty ideals. This season, there was a black woman wearing a bonnet to go to sleep, and that started discourse. So a black woman protecting her hair when she goes to sleep is a turn-off for some people, apparently. I think the only black woman on the show that I've seen wearing her hair out naturally would be Amber in the 2019 season. This show said it's casting the most beautiful people in the UK. And by that, they mean thin people with Eurocentric features. Beauty is the most diverse concept in the world. Think of all the ways that women can wear their hair. So why are we only seeing women with long straight hair? I want to see women with buzz cuts. I want to see women with braids. I want to see women with cornrows. Also, women, please remember, you're not allowed pubes. No, seriously, none of them. These bikinis aren't designed for actual people. They're designed for Barbie dolls that don't have bulbs. It's 2021. Just let a woman grow a bush, Jesus. This season there was a big fight because Hugo said he didn't like fake girls, meaning women that have had cosmetic surgery. And all the women in the villa turned on Hugo. How dare he body shame them for having cosmetic procedures? Faye said, "You don't even understand what it was like for me in school. The second I turned 18, my parents had to get me a boob job." Is it too late to call childline? But here's the kicker. Sharon pulled Hugo aside and said he had no idea what it felt like to be ashamed of his body. Unbeknownst to Sharon, Hugo is actually the first disabled contestant in Love Island history. But, because as I'm sure you're aware, Love Island only puts a certain type of person on their show, they of course didn't cast anybody in a wheelchair. They cast somebody with a non-visible disability. As someone else with a non-visible disability, I would like to say I find it deeply offensive, but Sharon said that there was no way Hugo could know what it's like to feel ashamed of his body. Sorry to break it to you, my non-visible disability cannot be cured by Botox. Furthermore, the homogeny of these women makes me worry about how young women today seem to think that they can buy beauty. Capitalism has such a stronghold over everything in our lives, even our body image. Let's go back to my Bible for a minute, because Sophie Hagen usually says things best. Our stains are smart like that. Men's opinion of me are irrelevant. Men's opinion of you are irrelevant too. Yet we are constantly being fed this idea that it matters. Men's opinions of me are irrelevant. Men's opinions of you are irrelevant too. Yet we are constantly being fed this idea that it matters. Men particularly are told that they should voice their opinions loudly, that we yearn for their approval. And to be fair, a lot of us do, fairly often, because that's what we have been taught as well. Hello, patriarchy, my good old friend. The men on Love Island are allowed a little bit more freedom in regards to, body hair. They can choose whether they want to manscape. However, they do also have a preference for Eurocentric hair. They often don't have hair longer than season 3's Chem. I mean, I just, why can't we get a man in the villa that has dreadlocks? A month into this season, Yomi Adegoke took to The Guardian with the article "From Racism to Trolling, Love Island is merely a reflection of real-life toxicity," in which she argued, one TV show can't and won't get to the root of bigger issues plaguing society. Adegoke rightly points out the first 4 women to be dumped from the villa this season, that being Shannon, Sharon, Rachel and AJ, were all women of colour. And it took a month for Kaz to find Tyler, the first guy that's shown any genuine interest in her. Kaz is unfortunately the latest in a long line of dark-skinned contestants, particularly dark-skinned women, being overlooked in favour of their white counterparts. Let's look at some examples. In Season 3, Marcel was picked last. His singlehood didn't last long. At the end of the first week, Gabby showed up, and the two of them coupled up, eventually making 4th place in the finale. In Season 4, Samira was picked last and never made any real connections until Casa Amor, when she found a guy called Frankie. Samira and Frankie never really got much airtime, and when there was a public vote, Frankie was sent home. The public were outraged. We'd spent all this time waiting for Samira to find a connection with someone, only for ITV to show us about 2 clips of his existence. Samira ended up leaving the show to be with Frankie, but sadly, unbeknownst to her, while she was packing her bags for him, he was cheating on her with a white girl back in the UK. Once again, in Season 5, we had a fan favourite in Yuande, who was a scientist making cancer vaccines, and she was dumped for a blonde model. This trend, where black contestants are considered undesirable, is firstly unethical. It is unfair to put black contestants into an environment where it is considered a neutral opinion to find them unattractive. Every season you see a dark-skinned contestant's confidence be knocked by the fact that nobody in paradise wants to be with them. This season we had a man with a neo-Nazi tattoo, but it took them over a month to find a guy that actually liked Kaz. And this trend of black contestants always being picked last makes me think of the phenomenon where people will write things like "no femmes, no fats, no blacks, no Asians" on their dating profiles. These people will defend themselves by saying, it's just a preference. No, it's not just a preference. Your bias toward white blondes is forged by centuries of white supremacy. And the fact that Love Island consistently casts people who are only attracted to white women betrays the fact that either the production just doesn't read any of the thousands of op-eds by black fans decrying these choices, or they genuinely just don't care because they don't believe that it's racist to have a preference. In her Guardian column, Adegoke notes that in the US, a country where black people date each other at almost double the rate of the UK, black women do have difficulties but fare better overall. Biora Shalajanova also wrote about Love Island's racism for Cosmopolitan. She noted that several times in the show's history, white women didn't even see black women as competition, citing when Arabella just completely dismissed Yuande's relationship with Danny, and Jess appearing shocked that Mike preferred Leanne to her. Shalajanova also wrote about the microaggressions that contestants of colour face within the villa. Moments after entering, Samira was asked to twerk, whereas Naz, a Middle Eastern contestant, was compared to Aladdin. And Shalajanova calls out another issue. How can Love Island be racist when contestants like Wes, Amber, Toby, Tyler are also popular? She quotes journalist Reese Smith, "Society has always favoured a specific beauty ideal in both men and women, whiteness. People who have light brown skin are less removed from this ideal than those of dark skin. Therefore, they're seen as more conventionally beautiful and as such do better in dating world due to unconscious bias. Mixed race is a huge umbrella term, not a specific racial identity in itself, and mixed race people are definitely have privileges over those with darker skin. Our lighter skin and sometimes whiter features are more palatable to a society where institutionalised racism and unconscious biases are very much real. This is even true among black communities, where the traumas of colonialism and white supremacy continue to perpetuate ideas that lighter skin is beautiful." Smith's analysis of how lighter-skinned black people are seen as more desirable is definitely seen in Love Island. White women often enter the villa and say their type is mixed race. In the 2018 season, Georgia told Josh on their first date that he was her type on paper because he was mixed race. She then decided to ask him where he was from. And Josh very calmly explained that he was English and Jamaican. However, it frustrates me that a microaggression such as asking a person of colour where they are from was left unchecked. I'm not saying that Josh had to be responsible for calling out the microaggression. I think that is the responsibility of the producers if they want to accurately safeguard their contestants. But, as I said, I doubt the producers give a damn. They had a man with a neo-Nazi tattoo on the show. This show makes $77 million a year for advertising, and you didn't have the budget to maybe do a quick background check to see, let's make sure we don't cast any racists. How are we feeling about the beat today? I mean, I tried putting fake eyelashes on to be a proper Love Islander, but it just weren't happening. They don't agree with my eyes, so I've done the monochrome eyes instead to, show respect to the winner of my eyes, which is obviously Kaz. This video has discussed some pretty serious topics thus far, but I had to leave the worst until last. I'm going to reiterate the trigger warnings I made at the start of this video for self-harm, domestic abuse, and of course suicide. On the 15th of February 2020, the former host of Love Island, Caroline Flack, was found dead. Within an hour of her death, the hashtag #BeKind was trending on social media. This was because, although her cause of death had not yet been released by the authorities, it was widely reported that Flack had died from suicide. Caroline had been under fire from the media since the 13th of December 2019, when she was arrested for assaulting her boyfriend, Lewis Burton. In a rage, Caroline had attacked Lewis because she believed he was cheating. The public outlash was immense. How could somebody hosting the biggest dating show in the UK be charged with domestic assault? On the 17th of December, Caroline made a statement saying that she was stepping down from Love Island. It's quite clear that in reality she was fired. Personally, I actually believe this was the right decision for ITV to make. You couldn't have the host of the world's most popular dating show being charged with domestic abuse. However, I would argue that it was incredibly irresponsible for them to just drop her without any form of aftercare. Especially since evidence has come out since her death that many people probably knew that Caroline was suffering from a long-term mental illness. Caroline's death was unfortunately the fourth in the show's history. The first was an islander named Sophie Graydon, who appeared in the 2016 series of the show. As I discussed in my Sex and Love Island section, Sophie was the first openly bisexual islander on the show and coupled up with another woman named Katie. Sophie was attacked for the public for being fake or appearing to use other contestants just to get closer to the 50k. Prior to her death, Sophie had spoken at length about her mental health. Shortly before her death, she had even appeared in an interview in which she discussed the impact that cyberbullying had on her mental health. Sophie said, "There are fans and positive comments, but people would focus on the negatives. Sometimes I would look for it. There would be so many negative comments. They are commenting on the way you look, the way you talk. They will come up with an opinion of you on a TV show where they've watched you for 45 minutes. And the thing is, Love Island actively plays into the outrage culture that surrounds its show. Some of the most targeted hate campaigns in the history of the show may not have been directly encouraged by the producers, but they certainly did not shy away from it. For example, let's look at Love Island's YouTube channel. One of their videos is called The Most Controversial Moments of All Time. It has over 4 million views. And the description? From gaslighting to islanders getting kicked out of the villa, here are Love Island's most controversial moments so far. Don't you love it when domestic abuse is minimised to a catchy tagline to make you watch a reality TV show? One of the most controversial contestants in the history of the show was Mike Velastis. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Mike entered the villa with his eye on Olivia, who had just begun a burgeoning romance with Chris. These two quickly became fan favourites. For me personally, I enjoyed their relationship because they both seemed to bring out a better side of one another. Chris allowed Olivia to be vulnerable instead of shouting at everybody. Whereas, for Chris, he became less arrogant. He actually tried to impress Olivia rather than bragging about how every girl in this villa just fancies him so much. However, there was a small problem. Chris wasn't Olivia's type on paper. And then Mike walked in, and here came the dick sand. That's a quote, I'm not just saying that, that's what Olivia always called Mike. In a very controversial recoupling, Mike decided to choose Olivia even though Chris wanted to couple up with her. Chris then decided to call him Muggy Mike, and well, a legacy was born. The way Mike was vilified publicly was once again essentially encouraged by the Love Island production team, with Muggy Mike constantly trending. A year after he appeared on the show, when Adam Collard was pieing off women left, right and centre, Muggy Mike trended again. Even after Mike's suicide, there is still a video on Love Island's YouTube channel in which they refer to him as Muggy Mike. Like, sometimes it seems like they have no shame, these producers. And here's where it gets so much worse, because Love Island's response to having 4 people associated with their show, that being Caroline, Mike, Sophie and Sophie's boyfriend Aaron Armstrong, commit suicide, is not to, apologise and promise they'll provide better aftercare. No. They like deflection. And even worse. I want to believe that Love Island has responded to these suicides by genuinely improving the aftercare of their contestants. I've seen Molly May speak favourably about how often she is contacted by the ITV team. I have seen Amy Hart go all over the news talking about how Love Island saved her life. Part of me is sceptical. Are they using Amy and Molly May to deflect from accusations that they don't provide adequate aftercare? But at the end of the day, it's their experience, it's not mine. That all being said, I'm now going to talk about what I personally consider to be the most exploitative thing to ever come out of Love Island, and that is the show titled #Hell Yeah to Self-Care. This show essentially revolves around Kem and Amber Gill, not the Amber that he won with, I doubt they speak anymore. They set up a hair studio beautician's counter for the two of them to have former Islanders and other celebrities come in and discuss openly about their problems. Here's my problem with this. ITV can sell an ad during Love Island for £45,000. Every year they make £77 million with ad spots in Love Island. And if they have shows that show former Islanders, these shows are also able to make massive amounts of money through ad revenue. So essentially what has happened here is they have used 2 former Islanders and made an ad spot that they constantly play during Love Island to make a show supposedly about mental health and self-care. And so instead of, maybe donating that money to mental health charities or using that money to campaign for a Labour government to come in so that the mental health services provided by the NHS are adequately funded, ITV used the suicides of 4 of their contestants. ITV had 4 people associated with their most famous show commit suicide and decided to make another show about mental health, which they basically just used as a cash cow. ITV saw all these people committing suicide and went, yeah, actually we can make a bit more money from. At the end of the day, you might be watching this video and going, okay, so if Love Island is so dangerous, why do people like myself keep watching it? And then why do we still criticise it? Like, isn't that hypocritical? And yeah, that's a valid argument. I think Love Island is interesting. I think it really does tap into a lot of the realities of modern dating. Also, it's genuinely entertaining. It's fun. Part of you really wants to root for these couples. Team Kyla for the win, by the way. But my problem with Love Island, fundamentally, why it's dangerous, is that it's cruel. Love Island is so associated with the #BeKind, when in reality it is just this excuse for people to show the worst of themselves, to bombard people they've never met with lots of hate, to attack people on their bodies when, like, they know nothing about that person's health, fitness regime, background, to tell people that they are heartless, thoughtless monsters that are only faking things to get money on reality TV. And then ITV makes a profit off of this and does it all over again next year, but with this facade of, oh, now we care about contestants' mental health. Like, it's so clear from the fact this show is incredibly racist, the fact that this show, allows these misogynistic conversations, from the fact that it's just so obsessed with thinness and that its contestants constantly perpetrate really problematic ideals of thinness and this obsession with weight loss. Like, I watch a Molly May vlog just to like kick back and enjoy myself. I think, God, she seems lovely. She seems like a really nice person. I'm glad she got second in that show. I'm glad she and Tommy used together. They seem like a great couple. And then she talks about, oh well, I had a Diet Coke, so now I feel like a whale. And it's like, of all the things you could want to be in the world, why are you so afraid of gaining a little bit of weight? And then why are you saying these awful opinions to this group, you know, full of young women mainly, that you have this massive influence on? And it's because these behaviours like fat phobia and having a preference for one race over the other, which is nonsense, and, you know, saying that men and women are fundamentally different. These are attitudes that are so rarely checked and so rarely called out. And to have the most famous dating show in the world just encapsulate all of the worst of these issues. Maybe it is just a reflection of society, but I do also think that the producers need to do better. And I do think that, I don't think that every single person that will tweet shitty things about Love Island is a terrible person. I wish that we as a whole could maybe just boycott the show until they make it better, but I know that's not going to happen. I just want recognition of, why do we accept this exploitation of people? Why do we accept these dangerous attitudes about the body? And how can we change them? And part of how we're going to change them is by changing the overall consciousness. And then, hopefully, eventually, that will be reflected in our reality TV. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you have any opinions on what I've just said. Do you think Love Island is indeed dangerous, or do you think, you know, I'm over-exaggerating everything? I'm sure you do. Please subscribe. I'm going to be making more video essays like this. And follow me on social media, because I do tweet about Love Island a lot. It's @BooksInIt on Twitter and Instagram. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.